So I pretty much have the wash effects done on the sides of the engines, the cab. I finished the trucks a little bit, the fuel tank. The roof is done. I'll have some detail shots of this in a second, but right now we're just going to focus on kind of what I've done so you guys can see all those subtle washes we've done. Oops. There's the other side. Okay, so what we're going to be working on next is the pilot details and stuff, the pilot weathering. I've already done one side to save some time, but I'll show you the basic idea. We're going to be putting the rust on the pilots, all the rust streaking and everything from the grime and everything, and then we'll do the wash on the the nose as well. I've already done this end. This is a good example of what we're going to be doing next. This is a little bit more tedious, if you will, because there's a lot more details we have to be aware of with you know, separately applied details on the pilot, all these other little parts and everything. It makes a little bit more of a challenge to get around them, but I'm going to show you how I do this. And again, smaller brushes are better at this point for such a, you know, fine little area, so I'm going to be using strictly my small dry Citadel brush. So if I put this down real quick, again, go into my mixing paste of paper here. I'm going to go with a slightly darker wash here, and I'm going to start with the front of the cab. I'm going to try to figure out the best angle is here. I guess I'm just going to have to hold it, which is okay. But obviously when you're doing this, be comfortable. If you have to get on your knees to do this, you know, whatever you got to do, get it done. But I'm just going to apply subtle washes to the front around the number boards, very sloppily, if you will, just to get started. Put a little bit on the nose. The grab iron. I've already put a little bit of a wash on the nose as I was doing the top of the engine, so I pretty much have this covered, and it's awaiting the shock effects that I'll put on later, so I won't worry about that right now. But now we'll go ahead and start taking the washes off the front. So again, I'm just going to take my Q-tip. If you can't get the Q-tip in really finely detailed areas, by the way, a good suggestion would be to be fine tip brush diluted in water. You can use those to get in smaller areas, finer detailed areas. That works pretty well too. You can use that if you like. Whatever, again, whatever's most comfortable to you and what you find works the best, use it. This is just a suggestion that I'm showing with my model and how I do it. But you guys find how you like to do things. I'm only providing you some ideas here. But you can see we're just hitting up the front of the nose here real quick. I'm keeping the washes pretty heavy. And then moving it up the top of the nose, hit up the side of the other side of the nose here. You see how good that's starting to look. You can see all the grime just built up everywhere. I'm gonna clean up some of the overwash on the side there where we already did it. Hit this side up too. Just cleaning up my extra bit. I like to call it overwash, where it bleeds over onto another side of a model that you might have completed, and just going back and cleaning that off a little bit. You can see very subtle here. Not too much, just only in certain little areas around the walkways and everything else. You can see I've already pretty much done the walkways as I was working around here. But again, some of these can get pretty grimy, so don't be afraid to kind of build this up in a pretty heavy Pretty heavy layer. Because these higher traffic areas, especially like around the anti-climber on the front and back of the engines, is where it's going to get extremely dirty. So don't be afraid to get filthy with that. Going back to my brush here, I'm going to work on the plow now. And this is where I start to get a little bit more detailed, because it's the most visible part of like the front pilot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my whitewash again. I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to work this down a little bit, just hitting it up. Again, being very careful of my separate little parts here. I don't want to bust off grab irons or anything like that, especially at this stage when you got everything painted, sealed up and everything. You don't want to be taking parts off and then having to replace them and stuff like that, because it's just a pain. You could put a little bit of a wash on this anti-climber here, very thin. I'll do the kick-up lines in a second once we get heavier with this, but this is just the rough line. Again, going pretty heavy on the front there. Pick up a little bit more paint. I'm going to do the coupler real quick. Very gently. And again, not only am I trying to be careful of small details, but I'm also not trying to beat up my brush here, because it can get caught on small little details and you'll bend these bristles up. These brushes are expensive, and I don't want to have to replace them every month, every time I do a locomotive, and just when I trash them, because as you can see, they end up looking like this. After you've done enough models, the bristles start to fray out and it just looks bad. I want to have a fine, sharp tip on these brushes at all times for this kind of work, so I don't want to beat them up. So I'm just trying to be very careful. That's extremely important. If you're going to do this kind of stuff, take care of your brushes, be careful around details. Your brushes will last longer, and you'll get better effects too. So just be very, very gentle when you're working with stuff like this. Pick up a little bit more paint, and we're back to it, and we're going to apply a second layer of wash on the pilot. Remember, it's going to be really, really heavy here, because you got all of the kick-up and everything shooting up on the plow here from the tracks. So I'm being pretty heavy here, and again, I'm just kind of trying to carefully tuck it behind the MU hoses, onto the ditch lights, around the coupler box, air hose, everything. Just trying to be as thorough as I can be here. Get up the back of the plow a little bit, get up top, hit it up, make sure all these little areas are covered, guys, very important. I'm going to kind of inspect my work here. I'll hit up the bottom of the plow where it'll be visible from, if you're looking at it from this angle, you'll be able to see that, so I'm going to hit that up. But, you know, you guys can see that. But right now I'm just inspecting my work. And there's another little area I need to get right there. All this up. Very, very gently. There we go. Okay, now we'll work on the defined kick-up streak. Alright, this is where you have wheel spray from cars, other locomotives coming in, and it puts all those fine little lines and stuff on the plow. So again, a very fine little bit of paint's getting picked up here. Get comfortable. And I'm just going to start kind of trying to put the actual defined spray line around the base of the plow here. I'm just kind of trying to spread it out a little bit, not too much. Just a little bit. Working it up. Take a look here. There we go. Just so I can get into this wing. You guys can see what I'm doing. Just trying to cover all the angles here. You can see you get that fine spray effect on the plow by doing that. So we'll go ahead and finish this off by putting the streaks on the anti-climber. And I'm going straight dry brushing now. I'm picking up a lot more paint and I'm just kind of dry brushing it. But I'm just going to start kind of trying to wash it on a little bit. Kind of gently. I'm not trying to go too heavy with this. And I just kind of streak it down. little bit here and there. Just kind of trying to respect my work here. Gonna get a little bit more at this part here. There we go. You guys can see that. Heavier buildup. Looks really good. Just going back and inspecting a few things here. Might hit this up a little bit again. It's just a little spot there. There we go. But that's pretty much it. Like, again, some units are worse than others, but this one's pretty light. Union Pacific locomotives, I've done enough of these where it's usually the same kind of effect where you have a light wash on the plow and then you actually have like more of the defined streaks that kind of just spray up on the anti-climber there. So that's what I was kind of trying to go for, and it's the same story on the rear anti-climber too. You guys can see that effect. So that's what we're going for, and that's what I've achieved here. And then the last thing I'll be doing to this, as we start wrapping up the project, is we'll start putting the chocks and everything, and I'll come back and hit the pilot details up with the chocks and powders next.